What's up everyone? Today we find ourselves taking a look at yet another Vocaloid song, analyzing its narrative, visuals, and music composition to give a retrospective on the overall experience given by the producer. The song we'll be looking at today is Shoujo Rei by MikitoP's. This is a song I've gotten a request for in my previous videos, and I've even been wanting to talk about it for a while now, so here we are today. Shoujo Rei is a song that radiates tranquil, relaxing summer energy in its composition. With instruments like the acoustic nylon guitar and the steel drums, just hearing the instrumentals on their own may paint the image of a warm summer day. Under this blissful veil, however, a dark series of events shape the lives of two girls, and it creates a narrative that gives me chills just thinking about it. Around the time I started my Vocaloid journey, this song was my very first taste of what it's like for a Vocaloid song to have a cheerful sounding composition overall, but a grim narrative underneath. And after learning what all the lyrics meant for the first time, my entire world was flipped upside down. I was never able to listen to Shoujo Rei the same way ever again. Let's dive in, shall we? Shoujo Rei is a song that was released on July 18, 2018, simultaneously on YouTube and Nico Nico. As of recording, it boasts over 5.74 million views on Nico Nico and 50 million views on YouTube. Sung by our beloved blue-haired voice bank Hatsune Miku. It's a song that is structurally very different from the usual high-energy, rock-driven, bass-slapping funk you hear in much of MikitoP's discography. In Shoujo Rei, the bass is significantly more steady, and the vibe is more calm and collected this time around. But a huge part of what makes this song so special isn't merely the instrumentation, but the numerous times Shoujo Rei uses the element of surprise to subvert expectations and change both the viewing and listening experience. Not only with the aforementioned signature MikitoP's bass sound, but in so many other different instances, oftentimes in the most unexpected ways. Take the meaning of the song's name for instance, Shoujo Rei. We can break it down into shoujo, which refers to a girl or a young woman, and rei, which is... What could this mean? Looking at the name at face value without any sort of context for the song, sure you can read it easily, but there's just no way to know what this means by itself when it's only written with katakana. Could it be your name? Does rei refer to zero? Does it refer to gratitude? Does it refer to an example? And this is where the first surprise comes into play. At least for the Japanese audience. If you're from overseas, you might have seen its translated name, which kinda defeats the whole setup. But at least for the Japanese audience, it's just a word with ambiguous meaning for now. It's only the name of the girl. Only after listening to the song, then revisiting the title with context in mind will it all become clear. Isn't that neat? From the moment you lay eyes on the name, there's a surprise hiding in plain sight. And there's so much more where that came from. We can cover this topic relatively fast, so let's take a look at our visuals as it's only one static image. Here's the artwork for Shoujo Rei, drawn by illustrator Rei Kato. Rei? Ah, it's only fitting. It appears we're focusing on two girls who are seemingly really close to each other, possibly friends, maybe even lovers given how close they are to each other. We appear to be at a railroad crossing, with a beautiful blue sea in the background on a partly cloudy summer day. As for the sign, well, I can't exactly tell what that top half is. It's a bit too small and compact to make out. We can clearly see a heart, so then that must be a hamburger? And I'm totally lost with those symbols in the middle. But if anyone watching this has seen a higher quality version and you know what these are and what they can mean, please let me know in the comments. The text below it, however, is legible and is read as Tokimi, which may or may not be a part of a message depending on the first half. I couldn't make out, but on its own, reversing the kana backwards spells out Mikito, our producer. There's a neat little Easter egg. Oh, and speaking of eggs, you may have noticed these little scraps of paper floating by the two girls. Except those aren't actually scraps of paper, but the producer's signature character, a pair of Miki Tamago. They aren't the easiest to spot, so it's a cute little surprise. There's no animation in the MV besides the lyrics on screen, but even that can tell us something important. If we look at how it's being presented, all of the characters in our lyrics are presented vertically, with the next lyric column fading in on its right. This sort of top to bottom, right to left writing style is a very specific writing format in Japanese called tategaki, which can technically be used whenever you want, but it's usually reserved for literature, newspapers, art, and letters. Going back to Shoujo Rei, the very fact that it's being presented like this, combined with the song's narrative, could be telling us that these lyrics, this song, is being addressed to someone. That this song is some sort of message or letter. This will all make sense soon, but it's time we begin to address the song head on. It's a summer like any other. Shoujo Rei opens with some ambient sounds to set the mood. It's tranquil and calming, as the synth lines hum a bright and mellow tune. It's a tune so calming, you can meditate on it. Nothing out here except you and the serenity of nature. Let the sounds of waves crashing and binaural tones guide you into a state of relaxation as you prepare to tackle a new tomorrow as a new you. I think it's really interesting that MikitoP's decided to add a line like this in the beginning of the song. It's a similar method to how movies immerse the viewer by using panning shots of the environment, music, and motion in the very beginning to lock the viewer's focus on the narrative and fully immerse them for the emotional roller coaster that is to come. Doing this for a song sets the atmosphere just as well. It's as if Mikito is telling you, buckle up, this isn't just a song you're about to listen to, it's a tale, a narrative. And it all started on this fateful summer day. It was a day like any other, where the winds blow, the cicadas sing, the waves crash, and the children laugh. The song propels us into the intro hook, and we're greeted with several different instruments all at once. It's a warm welcome, and all of these instruments work to create an equatorial and tropical atmosphere. Of the few instruments present, you can hear an acoustic guitar strumming our chord progression, with its nylon strings giving the song a more tropical sound as opposed to using a steel string guitar. On the percussion end, we have some clapping from the crowd. These claps are used in Shoujo Rei with syncopation to give the percussion a more free and interactive vibe, as if you were right here in this serene tropical setting. You've just found some pretty seashells on the ground. Or maybe you just bought them from that girl that sells seashells by the seashore. Either way, you celebrate and clap along to the sounds of summer, playing to the groove the summer gives you. Pair that with the tambourine and a light snare, and you get what you hear as the percussion. And then there's the main instrument we hear during these transitional verses. You definitely get those tropical vibes hearing this instrument, don't you? This instrument of Caribbean origins is called a steel pan, or steel drums. You may hear it called either one. It's essentially a gong made from steel that is divided into many different spaces marked by indents in the metal. These indents are carefully tuned to a specific chromatic pitch, and upon being struck by either a hand or a mallet, these indents ring out notes that the panist can use to create melodies. And that's exactly what you hear in Shoujo Rei. It isn't the most active layer in the song, but it does see a lot of use in the transitional verses as well as in the chorus as a support instrument. All of these instruments work together in unison to create the magic of our main hook. And it's probably the line you first think of when you hear the words Shoujo Rei. Although you get sweet summer vibes listening to this, and you're having the time of your life clapping along on the imaginary beach, may I remind you that although we all share the same summer, we do not all share the same experience. Because masked by the calm waves, the bright sun, and the festive music, lies a darkness that some were unfortunate enough to experience during what should have been a peaceful day. In comes our first verse, and our steel drums take a step back and make way for two other layers. A kick jump on the backbeat, and of course, our first vocal lines. That's a pretty dark image. We have two focus characters throughout Shoujo Rei. Let's call them Shoujo A and Shoujo B. Now one of them seemed to be panicking about something, with their movements imitating a desperate cornered mouse. They're in a very emotional state, in the depths of despair, and without even thinking about it, they jump into the railway crossing. This sets up the flag that one of our focus characters, Shoujo Rei, has ended their own life. This event and everything leading up to it is the primary focus of Shoujo Rei. It's the story that the song is trying to convey, and it only gets more descriptive from here. Now that we're in the pre-chorus, that MikitoP's bass finally comes into play. Roughly 38 seconds into the song, our bass line begins to make its move. But if you're familiar with MikitoP's usual style of music, you'll realize this is very different from how he usually approaches bass lines. Not only with how soon the bass came into play, but also the way it's being played. No funky bass phrases, no sudden octave hopping, no killer bass slapping. Just a simple bass line arpeggiating our song's chords underneath everything. This simple decision sets the mood for the entirety of the song as something more serious and fragile. An open field that even MikitoP's bombastic bass can't and frankly shouldn't frolic around in. We get some more development in the drums around this part as well. Before, we had our kick drum sticking only to the backbeat or beats 2 and 4. Now it's hit on every beat, and you get an almost metronome-like sound. We put on top of that what is commonly known as cross sticks or rim shots. It's a drumming technique where instead of hitting the head of your drum with the head of your stick, you hit the rim of the drum with the butt of your stick to create a simple clicking sound that goes perfectly in slower, more delicate parts of a song. Putting a simple cross stick pattern on top of our kick drum gives that percussion we're familiar with listening to this section of Shoujo Rei. Now let's switch back over to the story, and not only do we see development in the instrumentals, but in our main story as well. We go back in time a little, and it's revealed that Shoujo Rei, the girl from earlier who jumped into the railway, is a good friend of Shoujo Rei, our singer and messenger. Shoujo Rei has clearly been going through a lot in the events leading up to the railway incident, and has been facing it all alone, with no one else to turn to for support. No one else except one, Shoujo Rei, who is her only friend, and the only one she can rely on when she has nowhere else to go. It's only natural that a friend wants to help out another friend after all. Shoujo Rei reaches out her hand, and Shoujo Rei takes it. When they're comforting each other like this, they're at their closest. But it seems A wants to get even closer to B, to the point of becoming lovers. We learn that Shoujo Rei has developed feelings for Shoujo Rei, and she wishes these moments of comfort could last forever. Which, wow, that makes the present day all the more depressing. Poor Rei. In comes the chorus, and all the memories come flooding back to Shoujo Rei in the present day. All of the memories of that fateful summer. During this time, she moans her dear friend who will never return. The one friend she had feelings for. The one who she shared matching keychains with. Now torn apart for eternity. She even recalls the nostalgic sounds of their summer days, such as the cicadas that sing. But she also recalls a more eerie summer sound. Going back slightly to the pre-chorus transition, you might be able to faintly hear the sound of something approaching, something that is then interrupted by the crashing of the chorus transition pop. Yet another memory of Shoujo Rei that she begins to recall. Did you get that? Probably not if you don't know what to listen out for. So allow me to make it easier for you to hear. You'll now hear that same part again, but with the SFX layer in isolation, along with the vocal layer for point of reference.
場所なんてないだろう二人きりこのまま愛し合えるさ繰り返す学生の声二度とは帰らぬ君
It's the distinct, mechanical beeping of a train, slowly crescendoing until the chorus detonates with enough energy to move us forward in our chorus. Earlier we were told a figure jumped into the railway in a state of depression. Combining this fact with these sounds gives us some pretty scary imagery. This is a sound you hear much later on, much more clearly. But to think it was here this early on, being used as both a transitioning S-effects as well as a narrative device tied to Shoujo Rei's memories, absolutely gave me chills. Back to the chorus, it's not just that sound making a return. Our beloved summer instruments come back to liven things up. Those claps from earlier illuminate the percussion lines just like before, and now it's in tangent with our new vibrant and powerful snares to give the chorus its energy. And another returning friend, the steel pan comes back and gives us a new melodic line just for the chorus. The gang's all here, at least for as long as we're recalling Shoujo Rei's memories here, because snapping back to reality shows us a more dejected present, and the music even reflects this sudden wake up by slightly changing the phrasing of our melody. It's all one big tragedy. It's sad hearing Shoujo Rei cope with Shoujo B's death like this. It hurts them so immensely to lose the one that she loves, that she wishes to be possessed by her spirit, so that they may stay together forever. So far, the story of Shoujo Rei has been one of remembrance. A story where Shoujo Rei recalls the sights, sounds, and feelings of their time spent with B during their summer together. But from this point on, Shoujo Rei's element of surprise really starts to take effect in the narrative. This song begins to take a dark turn in the second verse, and it becomes more apparent as to why the events of the summer played out the way they did. Beneath the tremolo picking of the guitar and the ringing of the triangle, Shoujo Rei reveals a shocking secret to the listeners. In comes September 1st, the beginning of autumn. School is in session, and when the bells begin to chime throughout the school, Shoujo Rei's true nature begins to break loose. This line could be referencing a possibly very fallen out of practice form of bullying in Japan, where usually a vase of flowers is placed on the desk of a deceased student as a way to mourn their passing. However, placing a vase of flowers on the desk of someone who is still alive is a form of bullying. It's almost like a mock funeral, and it's a very blunt way to say that a student should die. So in Shoujo Rei, the next student, which Shoujo Rei refers to as a target, isn't the first victim of this act. Shoujo Rei explicitly states that she was the one who started this form of bullying at her school, and the lines that follow imply that Shoujo B was the very first victim of this harassment. It's also possible that this September we're currently focused on is last year's September, where Shoujo B was still alive, and that the next victim is actually her, which will mean that this bullying will have gone on for almost an entire year before wrapping around to that tragic summer we all know. Both scenarios are likely to have occurred though. With these lines and the lines that follow, we can be certain that Shoujo A had actually been a bully of Shoujo B this whole time. But aren't these two supposed to be friends? And didn't we just establish Shoujo A's love for Shoujo B? This isn't making any sense. How would she be Shoujo B's bully? The answer is a lot more twisted than you think. Shoujo A isn't just in love with B, she is crazy for her, so much that she concocts a plan to make B love her back no matter what. The plan is simple: indirectly bully her relentlessly, get the other students in on it too, they'll ruin her life without A ever needing to show her face. They'll be more direct with her, pushing her to tears, they'll destroy her morale until she submits to her aggressors, and then they'll destroy her even more. All while Shoujo A puppeteers everything from the shadows. And then when Shoujo B is broken and needs a shoulder to lean on, she'll need someone to save her, won't she? She relies on her only friend for emotional support, Shoujo A, the secret puppet master. She looks to her for comfort, the only person who really understands her and treats her like a human being, the only person she knows who can give her a break from her suffering and save her from drowning in her emotional turmoil. And Shoujo A will gladly take her hand and lay a kiss on it, assuring B that when the world turns against her, she'll always be there for her. Shoujo B will only ever have eyes for her and no one else, exactly how A wants it. It should have been a perfect plan, and it was going so well for a while. However, one fateful summer, something unexpected happened. The puppets break free from the strings and commit something atrocious on B, something that even A probably didn't expect. And little did she know, this would be the catalyst for the event that would tear them apart for eternity. On that day, Shoujo B was attacked by her bullies. The assault took place right in her own learning environment, a place that should have been a safe space for her from the start. Those faintly smiling beasts all dug their nails into her until each of their hearts were satisfied. We can gather that she was clearly assaulted here, but the emphasis the lyrics place on her now uneven skirt implies something even more disturbing. It paints the image that Shoujo B was actually assaulted that day by these monsters until all of their hearts were fulfilled, and her terrified wails echoed throughout the entire classroom that day, loud enough to be heard from through the windows. But no one is around to save her, not anyone that's willing to at least, because Shoujo A is listening to it all unfold. That would explain how she's able to recount these events so clearly, as if it reverberates through not just the classroom, but the mind of A. She states it was a scream that tore through the silence of summer. It's a scream so agonizing, it can be heard as clear as day, as clear as the bright and calm blue summer skies that they all live under. What would have been a bright, fun, and relaxing summer day for anyone else was effectively a dark and terrifying living hell for Shoujo B. It's a time where the bullying went too far, and this incident had such a high effect on Shoujo B, it pushed her to take her own life. Immediately after we hear the train, the same one from before, we hear a voice say, "Kimi wa tomodachi." It being a completely different voice from the singer, it's likely this voice belongs to Shoujo B, and that these were her parting words shortly before her demise. The lyrics that follow shortly after this bridge section are likely a response from Shoujo A, restating the thoughts haunting her mind during the incident, as well as her thoughts ever since, echoing and replaying in her head over and over again. Flashbacks to the summer that took her love away. Temporarily masked by the sounds of our train passing by, the easygoing, casual sounds of summer that we know from before all abruptly come back into the scene for one vibrant solo, our playful hands clapping to the rhythm in a syncopated fashion. And our acoustic guitar playing is just, beautiful. They are going off here, but even with these playful instruments present, that serious bass guitar line from before is still here, which not only makes this whole section sound more developed with its presence, but you can even look at it as a representation of the more serious tone of the story, as we talked about earlier. There's a lingering darkness in the air, and it all stems from those train tracks. And its darkness permeates the mind of our singer, writer, and puppet master, Shoujo A, leading to a series of flashbacks, regret, and heartbreak that form the lyrics we hear throughout the song. But it's business as usual for our MC, as the bells that signal the autumn time ring out, and the vase of funeral flowers is placed by the next target. Shoujo B still lingers in her mind, and a thought crosses her mind that would completely change the course of how this story ends for the two of them. So there's a pretty interesting way to look at this last section as we go into our final chorus. Shifting gears and changing our key by a half step, we've established at this point that Shoujo A has an extremely unhealthy obsession with Shoujo B, going as far as to manipulate herself and her gang of bullies if it means B has eyes for her and her alone, together, for as long as they live. But what if it didn't have to stop there? What if the obsession doesn't end at death's door and the two can be together for eternity? With this mentality in mind, we can look at the same chorus lyrics we got to know from before from a different perspective. Before, it was just a sad but innocent mourning of her best friend, but its meaning is now warped into something much more disturbing here. Depending on how you interpret this ending, it's possible that Shoujo Rei felt a heavy feeling of guilt about what happened to Shoujo B and decided to end herself as a result, as we can hear at the end of the song. It's also possible that Shoujo A, being as engrossed in Shoujo B as she is, uses this chance to chase down B to the ends of the earth and beyond. This obsessive mindset gives way to a new perspective of the lyrics we've gotten to know before. Lines like the hypothetical, "What if we were to meet again in the transparent world?" The transparent world obviously being death. Lines that bring up Shoujo B's absence from this world, as if A knows she won't be able to seek her for as long as she's in this world, but that they can reunite in death. And the line, "I want to be possessed so badly it hurts," may not be coming from a place of innocent grief, but a mix of disappointment and infatuation to chase and join Shoujo B for eternity. And moments later, we come all the way back to the train tracks, the same train tracks where this song narrative began, and where it will come to an end. As the narrative comes to an end, Shoujo A's life follows, and just before it does, a figure appears before her, a ghost. It points directly at her, and these two girls sing one final song of sorrow before it all comes to an end. It isn't totally clear as to why Shoujo B is pointing at Shoujo A here. Maybe this is a hallucination of the time Shoujo B ended herself, pointing at A from the tracks and saying,
君は友達
but this is most likely reality. A true transparent figure appears before Shoujo A and points. This part could be referencing that one trope in horror films where the ghost of the deceased points at the individual responsible for inflicting their death. And in this specific instance, it's Shoujo B, fully aware of the fact, pointing directly at her killer, Shoujo A. It's possible that after Shoujo B's death, she remained in the world as a ghost and was able to see A for the kind of person that she really is. After witnessing Shoujo A's true self break loose, she watches the flower vase placed on the next victim's desk, and the cycle of bullying repeat itself. She understands she was betrayed by who was supposed to be her friend, and she understands that A is responsible for making her life a living hell and pushed her this far, and so she points at her true bully. Shoujo Rei points at Shoujo A as the train approaches, and puts an end to this tragic story. Now that the song is over, Shoujo Rei's element of surprise can come into play one last time. Now that we have context for the song, we can look back at the title, and it is very clear what Rei is supposed to mean in the title. While Rei can just be a name, it can at the same time be a play on words. Rei for spirit or ghost. Shoujo Rei is the ghost girl. Now that's pretty chilling. With this in mind, there's still another surprise waiting for you if you hadn't already noticed it. We briefly glossed over what we saw in the MV artwork earlier, the Tokimi-san, the railroad setting, the bright blue sky, the MikitoP's, and our two focus girls. But if you look deeper and analyze the composition of the entire instrument, you'll notice that everything in the image has a shadow, as everything should have. Except for one of the girls, our Shoujo Rei. And as for our environment, those boom barriers aren't there just to look pretty. A boom barrier's purpose is to restrict an approaching person or vehicle's access to the tracks, usually because there's an oncoming train in the distance, and Shoujo A is currently between its two arms. She's fully aware and intending to take the blow. The moment she does, we hear a laugh in the distance. But who does it belong to? Is it Shoujo B, who after revealing herself and pointing to A, knowing full well that A bullied her to death, laughs at A's death, now that she's gotten a taste of her own medicine? Or is it Shoujo A's laugh, who now crosses worlds to reunite with B? There are no other students here for B to even consider falling in love with now that they're both ghosts. No one to get in A's way now. They'll only have eyes for each other. The plan worked out, and they'll be together forever now. This ending could be Shoujo A letting out a laugh knowing that in the end, she wins. It's scary to think about, but that's just the kind of story this is. Food for thought, and so much of it too. It's impressive just how full of surprises Shoujo Rei is every step of the way, from the moment you lay eyes on the name of the song to the very end of the listening experience. MikitoP's ensures that every little development in the music, the visuals, and the narrative evokes shock in the hearts of those who follow it as intended, every step of the way. We went over a couple of ways to interpret the story earlier, but there's one perspective in particular that involves changing the order in how you read everything. There's a popular theory with this song in the community that tells you that if you take the lyrics and read it all backwards, it will tell you the entire story more clearly. It's supported by our Tokimi sign from earlier, which is just a backwards Mikito. It's believed that this sign is pretty much telling you that reading the lyrics backwards reveals the true way the events play out. It even ends with by itself, it means jumped into the railroad crossing. There are no first, second, or third person pronouns present here, so who this could represent technically depends on whichever way you read the story. Whether you read it backwards and the story ends with A jumping into the crossing, or whether you read it forward and you understand that this is all one big letter to Shoujo B from Shoujo A, and the story begins with the flashback of Shoujo B jumping into the crossing. If you want my thoughts on this theory overall, while I think that viewing it this way gives you a slightly more solid and chronological timeline of events, especially starting from the warning bells of the oncoming train in the middle of the song, it also doesn't really change anything or tell us anything new about the narrative, and in fact takes away from the surprise and setups intended for the normal forward viewing experience, especially when we are made to believe that Shoujo A is all innocent at first, and then it's revealed that she bullied B to death. It is a neat circumstance of the lyrics though. Props to MikitoP if this was intentional. Alrighty, before we end things here, I want to briefly talk about the Project Sekai version of the song. No instrumentals have been changed for it this time around, but it is a pretty interesting choice how the song was given to Momo Jump to cover. If you're familiar with the unit's theme, this is a very jarring vibe switch, not something you'd expect to hear from them. I'm under the impression that it's because two of the unit's girls and our singers, Haruka Kiritani with the short blue hair and Shizuku Hinomori with the long blue hair, look the closest to the focus girls in the album cover, and I'm almost certain this is why these two were chosen to cover the song, which is sick. And this cover sounds absolutely beautiful. Shout out to Mayu Yoshioka and Nina Honizumi. They both do an amazing job singing this song, and I get chills listening to this version with the narrative in mind. It just feels more real, although it's for this reason that I don't think adding Miku alongside these two is a good idea. Not only does her voice kinda clash in this song's case, but narrative immersion, remember? Two girls, remember? Anyway, I love the addition of Shizuku's line transitioning into the final chorus. It adds so much tension to the buildup of the finale, and to let it all out with the key change and the explosion of instruments is just so gorgeous. And then the way they hold the notes a little longer during the last vocal section makes it sound so much more smooth compared to the original, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. The harmonies created from these two voices, yes too, creates a sense of storytelling in the vocals. Like our two singers have reunited in this ending to sing us out one last beautiful ballad. Fates intertwined as we say goodbye to the calming summer vibes that greeted us and remained until the very end. The events that played out may not be very fortunate, and we may not have gotten the best ending, but the waves still crashed, the sun still shined, and the cicadas still sang. It was a summer like any other. Thanks for watching.